Light, by the virtue of its nature, casts shadow. We mask our eyes from these shadows at our peril. If everywhere you look you see devils, then the assumption is that you must be in hell. And perhaps that's true. But what if everywhere you see devils is because there are devils everywhere, and there always were? What changed? Did you take a wrong turn? Have you died and been punished? Make no mistake, there is such a thing as evil. Yet where does this evil dwell? And at what point did you become so very virtuous that you began to distinguish yourself from that evil? Where does the line between conduct and consciousness begin? And more importantly, where does it end? If you see devils, then maybe there's more to be seen than you first noticed. I spent 6 years living as though, knowing with absolute certainty that I had died, been judged and gone to hell. No one and nothing could convince me otherwise, but in this process I realised my own nature. I realised that if you look just the right way, that with very little shift that hell is all around us, and the simple act of observation with clear eyes as my defences unravelled. As my identity fractured under the enormous weight of suffering, and indeed my own death, and the visceral inability to separate people's actions, behaviour and instructions from that of the denizens of a deeply disturbing and dark underworld, I realised. The world I was in hadn't changed, I could just see things more clearly. For my mind to accept the endless psychological dissolution, the abject cruelty and unrelenting force of darkness and evil that had been the last 21 years of my life to that day. The only explanation that made any of this make sense was that I had died, and literally, with no metaphor, delusions or phantasms, descended into hell. What a revelation. The world I was in before was exactly the same, but I could see the gruesome violence, the abuse, the systemic hatred, the generational trauma shared by millions of people. I had eyes to see and a desire to pluck my eyes from my head in the weight of this seemingly valid and compelling belief. It became so much that when told to take medicine that would help, and was then later threatened with violence to compel me to take it, despite my presence being voluntary and begging them for help, total willingness to follow as they led, a further revelation came to pass. Either every single person in this place was in on it, or they were in fact subject to the same now shattered delusion that I was entranced by up until my death. This led to an explosion of compassion in my heart that I had spent years utterly at the whim of, the force of constant heartbreak for the fake of the world. All the while desperately clinging, clamouring, hallucinating an unreconciled drive to return to the place that I'd been before I took my own life. Whilst my heart has hardened once more, the wave of sorrow I felt as my mind reached out to the whole of humanity left a temporal echo in my soul that remains to this day. To this day, the paradox of complicity rages in my heart. Either they know what they do, or they are subject to the torture of hell just as I am. Yet through conduct and compassion, through prayer and the cleansing of my psyche, through the grace of whomever or whatever blessed my mind with absolution in the years to come, I have had a glimpse into nirvana. A moment of relent, a peace and bliss transcendent and all-pervading, the truth behind the illusion. The gift of that same vision of hell, with all the subtlety of the previous shift of consciousness, the realization of self, the recognition of truth, the acceptance of reality, the clarity of mind as stark as the darkness in which I'd spent the first 27 years of my life, peace was glimpsed. A subtle shift of consciousness, so it's so subtle almost as to go unnoticed until the colours changed. The vibrancy of my vision, the shift from demonic voices and visions to the subtle, delicate voices of nature. The spirits of the wind, the sky, the gods, goddesses and demigods and demi-urges, the clear and calm recognition that despite it all there is compassion. Once the lights go out and all is burning in hellfire, what remains but the heart? The soul condemned, the mind broken, the body merely an instrument of continued suffering. Yet the breaking of the heart, in contrast to the breaking of the mind, leads not to less love, but to more love than I can possibly contain. To look at the suffering of the world and see oneself, to see God in the eyes of every broken spirit, to see the entire cosmos in the lowest places. One feels as though the heart becomes infinite in its capacity for compassion. The love of God, Krishna, the Christ, the heart of existence itself emerges, not by turning a blind eye, but fully immersing oneself in absolute vision. Seeing the suffering of the world with no guard on the heart. This is true self-realization. This is the true hidden knowledge. Yet to live in this realization means not to change my mind, not to heal my broken soul, not to escape hell on earth, but to love it. To love it so much that the demons recoil in horror, and the light we pervade, and the burning of all darkness away through holding it all at once. And in this realization, hell becomes heaven.